In this discussion, we will take a look at the discussion question of compare the terms fiscal accountability and operational accountability and the accounting basis used for each. When we see a discussion question or essay question like this, our objective typically is to expand on the discussion question or essay question when time allows, that making it more likely that we touch on those areas to pick up points for an essay question and be able to add more new information to a discussion for a discussion question. Keeping that in mind, let's look at this one more time. Compare the terms fiscal accountability and operational accountability and the accounting bases used for each. So if we see something like this, we first probably want to define those terms where we have fiscal accountability and operational accountability and compare and contrast them and then apply the bases to them, comparing and contrasting the two bases. Now, we may want to take, of course, a step back and think about these two terms as they apply. These are going to be general kind of accounting terms. We can get into what type of accounting terms would be used for profit usually, because that's going to be our starting point that we think about versus the governmental type of entities. We could think of the major two accounting terms, which are kind of the extremes in terms of accounting bases or the endpoints. You can think of them as a spectrum, not two distinct things, but a spectrum, more of an accrual type basis and more of a cash type basis. And those are going to be the two types of accounting bases. And then anything else is usually some kind of combination somewhere in between an accrual basis and a cash basis. So you can think about those type of things and get into that type of discussion as well. The term fiscal accountability focuses on the short term flow of resources or how government has used its resources in that short-term type of activity. Whenever you hear that, you want to think that, okay, that's going to be a little bit different than normal for-profit type of accounting. So when you hear something that's saying, okay, it's going to be focused more on the short term, then you're going to think, well, that's not going to be using what we would normally think of as just a straight accrual or even a straight cash basis. That's going to use something else, which we're going to call a modified accrual basis. So the modified accrual basis is going to be applied to the idea, the concept, which is going to be fiscal accountability, that it's more based on the short term. Operational accountability focuses on the efficient and effective use of resources in this case, of course, by the government. And that's going to be more of the standard kind of idea that we would think about, because that's going to be similar to the type of objective we would have for a for-profit. The best method that we have come up with for a for-profit, which is similar to that type of objective, is, of course, the accrual basis of accounting. Under the modified accrual basis of accounting, revenues are recognized in the period they are measurable and available for spending, and expenditures, which are not expenses, we're going to be using the term expenditures as opposed to expenses, and that's one of the major ways that we're going to know that we're using a modified accrual basis for governmental accounting and a normal type of accrual basis. Whenever we see the term expenses, you can say, well, that must be used in a normal type of accrual accounting. And if you see expenditures, then we're saying, that must be a modified accrual basis, are recognized when they create an obligation to be paid from current financial resources. Under normal accrual accounting, you'll recall that we have two types of principles, and this is going to be related to the timing accounts. That's going to be revenue and expenses. We have the revenue recognition principle, and we have the matching principle or expense recognition principle, in essence recognizing revenue when it has been earned at the point in time that it has been earned, when the work has in essence been done, recognizing expenses in essence when they have been incurred in order to achieve the goal of revenue generation. So those are going to be the accrual type of principles that we would be more kind of familiar with from for-profit type of accrual accounting. The focus for accrual accounting is on the flow of economic resources. So you want to keep that in mind. It's on the flow of economic resources with regards to accrual accounting. From this point, you can start to list out what type of organizations or what type of entities within governmental type of entities would use a modified accrual basis as opposed to the accrual basis, and why. And when we get into that, basically different types of funds often use a modified accrual basis. The government-wide type of activities will typically use the accrual basis of accounting. So the government funds typically use the modified accrual basis. And then if you had time to expand from here, we could then take a look at differences in terms of the financial reporting for these items. And we can also look at different type of financial transactions and think about how would they be recorded on something like a general fund, which is on a modified accrual basis versus a government-wide type of activity on an accrual basis, and actually look at the differences in the recording of these methods, and then we can analyze why they might be different in accordance with the objectives of the accrual and modified objectives.